Hey there, everyone. Today we're beginning our investigation of the financial markets and financial system, primarily looking at the relationship between savings and investment, as well as getting an understanding for why financial markets exist and what services they provide to the economy. We start with the recognition that business provides capital equipment for itself through investment. That in order for the economy to grow, in order for supply to increase, in order for firms to produce goods and services for people, they rely on capital equipment. And we also will recognize that businesses traditionally acquire physical capital through the financial system, through loans. And so there is a strong connection between the lending process and the ability for the supply side of our economy to provide the investment necessary for growth. And so there is a very simple relationship or connection between savings and investment. It's called the savings investment spending identity. And basically it boils down to this: savings in the economy equals investment. If there's no savings in the economy, there's no money in the banks to lend out, and therefore there's no borrowing by businesses to purchase equipment, and therefore there is no investment. It's really this most simplistic way of looking at it. You can sort of come to an understanding of this sort of identity, this reality of math, that if we have income, then we can either save it or spend it, which is what we learned in Unit 2. And when it comes to spending, and in the most simple of versions of this model, where it's just businesses and households, then there's either consumption spending or investment spending. And so we can say that savings plus consumption then is equal to consumption plus investment. And you can wipe consumption out of both sides. We see that savings must equal investment in the most basic of models. We could get more complicated. We could add in the government. We could say that the budget balance of the government impacts total investment. If the government has what's called a balanced budget, it's spending as much as it taxes, then there's no impact on overall investment. If the government is taxing more than it spends, there's excess money in the system, I suppose, and that leads to a greater level of investment. And if the government taxes less than it spends, it's running a deficit, and that's going to siphon money out of the financial system and away from investment. So here it's important to recognize, and this is going to become an issue later as we talk about stabilization policies in Unit 4, that we live in a world of scarcity in which there are unlimited wants, but there are limited resources. And so the government would love to spend a lot of money. Businesses would like to spend a lot of money. People would like to spend a lot of money, but there's only so much money to go around. And so when government chooses to spend more than it takes in taxes, there is a consequence to that spending in the form of reduced investment. As we get into the course a little deeper, we'll say that opportunity cost may be worth it. It might be that government spending and deficit spending in particular is worth it and provides a great deal of benefit, even though it leads to less investment. But it is important that you recognize, even here at the very beginning, that there is in fact a trade-off that is occurring when the government chooses to spend more than it taxes. We could get further into this. We could expand the economy to include the outside world, to include other countries. And that's where we start talking about what's called capital inflows or capital outflows. And if there's a capital inflow, it means that people from outside of our country are beginning to invest inside of our country. They're making money in our financial system available for use inside of our country. If there is a capital outflow, however, it means that domestic sources of savings are sending it out to other countries for them to invest. And so this sort of savings investment identity tells us that if capital is flowing in, there's more money available for investment. If capital is flowing out, there's less available for investment. All of this savings and investment occur within the financial markets. The financial markets exist primarily to help bring people together. to bring those who are looking to invest in contact with those who have the resources available for them to borrow. And so financial markets help solve the challenge that businesses face of trying to find the resources for investment by putting them all in one place. And we typically call that the banking system. And we'll talk more about that in a couple of days. In general, financial markets make investment possible for three primary reasons. One, they're going to reduce transaction costs, which we'll talk about in a moment. They're going to reduce risk, and they're going to provide liquidity. When it comes to transaction costs, think for a second, where would you like to go if you were going to buy eggs, milk, and bread? Would you rather go to the chicken farm to get your eggs, stop by the bakery to get your bread, and a dairy to get your milk, including all of the time it takes to transport yourself from each of those three locations? Or would you prefer to just go to a supermarket where they're all three there at the same place? And for virtually everyone in the world, we'd say, let's go to the supermarket. And it's the same way with investment. If you're a business, you could, if you're looking for money to access for purchasing capital equipment, you could go down the street. If you're a businessman, you knock on every single door along the way and say, please, sir, would you like to give some money to my business? And people might say, well, sure, I've got $20 here. And then you go to the next house and maybe they have 10, and the next house and the next 5 or 6 houses slam their doors in your face, and maybe somebody else has $1,000 because they think it's a great idea. But you're going to have to spend a lot of time going from door to door to door to door to door to gather up the millions of dollars it's going to take to purchase the capital equipment to run a new factory. And so that's obviously a major drag on your time. Opportunity costs are massive. But with a financial market, instead of having to go to the individuals have come together already, pooled their resources in one place. We'll call it a bank. And then the business then only has to go to one location to get the capital they need for investment. Right? So the financial markets help sort of bring everything together into a one-stop shop. The financial markets will also help reduce risk. Investment comes with risk. And so the financial markets enable people to sort of share the risk of investment. I'm not fully responsible for funding a company. It's you, me, and a million other people who have put our resources together. So no one person is bearing all of the risk associated with investment spending. And then it also allows for diversification. And this is key, because diversification lowers risk for everybody while enabling them to enjoy the reward of their investment. As Benjamin Franklin famously said, in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. And because of that, everything else comes with risk. And the financial markets help us to manage that. Finally, the financial markets help provide liquidity. It helps to convert assets, things of value that we possess, into cash. And that cash is what's necessary to purchase the physical capital that businesses need for investment. And so one term that you should become familiar with is this idea of liquidity. Anything that is easily converted into cash is considered liquid. Things that are not easily converted are illiquid. Cash is liquid. It is already cash. We're going to find out when we talk about money that your savings account is pretty liquid. You can't use your savings account to buy anything, but you can turn it into cash almost instantaneously. Your house, however, is illiquid. It is an asset. It's worth money. You can convert it into cash once you sell it, but that selling process can take months and months and months. And therefore, it is not easily converted and is considered illiquid in nature. In class, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the major financial assets, stocks, bonds, for example, and talk a little bit more about the financial markets. And I will see you then.